approximate tax revenue would be from the property, which I understand, you know, is going to be a benefit to Mr. Biddle's company because he hopefully will be able to write some of that off in his tax returns would be just beneficial to him and beneficial to the city. And I just don't see, you know, where the value of open space. I drive by this all the time on my way to Engine 26, and I look at it as if it will help develop jobs and income and grand list and tax growth, then certainly something we should look at.
Anything else?
Through the chair, I just have some comments. I've been thinking about this for quite a while. I'm not completely comfortable with the price. I really have to back Councilman Genesi up on his comments. I mean, it is true that we're potentially letting this go for less than what we might be able, on a perfect day in a perfect market, be able to find on the open market. I'm not even sure about that. I mean, the possibility exists. I know that if I was running that parking lot, I would be asking $50 a space, but that's retail. I couldn't pay $50 a space and then get $50 a space. I'd have to be out of business, so I would probably try to pay wholesale if whoever owned it, offer them 25 and then try to flip them for 50, knowing that your occupancy rate is never going to be 100%, and try to find some profit in there someplace. We could conceivably offer to the mall. We could create a new non-contiguous parking regulation in Danbury, and they might be able to increase some square footage of the Danbury Square Mall or one of the gas stations or something like that, and increase the value at some point. And that's something we can think about doing down the road. But we don't have any of that stuff now, so those tools are not on our toolbox. So we've got the Biddle's offer, and that's essentially all we're going to have. Neil builds the thing on the corner. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But right now, this looks like the only potential use of a money-making variety for the city is Mr. Biddle's offer. I'd like it to be higher. With the taxes, we're getting to a figure that I am very comfortable with, assuming that this estimate is somewhere in that ballpark, so I am more and more comfortable with the price. I agree with Ben about the open space. I would hate to see this lot cut up. However, if it could somehow remain somewhat permeable, I would be more comfortable with that. It seems like a good compromise. These guys get their extra seats. We don't destroy the lot. It's still in a somewhat natural state. I'm sure we can figure out how to market with a lot that's only being used temporarily. The fair didn't seem to have any problems with that. They used it 10 days a year, and they had it fairly well worked out. I think we can work through that. I will support this. I'm not going to be a big advocate for it, but we're much closer to where I think we should be representing the city's interests, which are varied. I mean, the city interest is not, it is a financial interest. It is a fiduciary responsibility we have, but we also have these other responsibilities. Encouraging business, encouraging trade, putting a welcome sign on the door. I mean, these are things that go beyond the pure monthly rent. So I'm not completely happy with the whole thing, but I think the compromises I can live with. And I don't know what the motion is going to be, but if the motion is going to be something about what we talked about tonight, I can support it. Thanks.
Mr. Biddle, we've been speaking a lot for you tonight. Is there anything that you wanted to add to this?
I feel that the appraisal that the city had done on the recommendation of the two MAIs that reviewed it, they found some serious flaws in it, and that was that Nochi valued this property as a buildable, developable parcel, and he used comparables from around the state of Connecticut of land that was developable into shopping centers. That is just not the case here. First of all, it's zoned industrial, not shopping center, and he used shopping center comparables. And number two, you can't even build an industrial building on it. So I feel that by, in effect, kind of splitting the difference is what we ended up doing. Ended up being quite fair for the city, number one. I think that, that the chairman's idea of using a per square foot or per space measure was excellent, because you can look at what your parking garages yield. And I'm in the parking garage business also. We run one in White Plains, and I can tell you, if you get $40 a month from a tenant of a parking space, you got a lot of payroll, there's a lot of money that goes in to drain your gross income down to a pretty low net in running a parking garage. So look at it from that point of view of what you could get in the middle of Danbury, in an active area where people need parking, to an area way out here where, quite frankly, the only people that can use this are maybe a guy that wants to store bark mulch on it, or me. And by strengthening our shopping center, by giving more parking, you're gonna make our shopping center healthier. That's gonna enable the real estate taxes to be higher on the shopping center, which I think is gonna probably more than offset what I'm paying in rent on this extra land. And only other comment is, when we talk about, is it valuable for open space? Let's not confuse that there's two pieces to this. One is existing paved areas, which have been paved areas for 15 years. And then there's a grassy area that is probably the subject of whether or not that's a good thing for open space. In terms of wildlife and all that, I mean, this is at an airport. You got airplanes coming in and out. You got cars. It's one of the busiest areas in Danbury. If you're a bird, you don't want to be anywhere near this parcel.
Oh, they do.
They love it.
They love it.
They do, yeah.
Full of
Geese.
birds.
I have enough problems.
Maybe it's dangerous for the airport to have geese there, but in any event, that's all I want to say.
Jeff, if I could just add a comment to what Wing has said, and to address Ben in terms of values.
Steel markets.
For the record, I'm Neil Marcus, and and I think actually it was said at this end of the table earlier that you got to look at what the city wants to accomplish, and if the idea is to try to maximize, as Ben had said, whatever return you can get on this parking area, that's one thing. If the other thing is, I think what we're really trying to do is to see the economic picture at a larger scale. And right now, I got to tell you, Bacchus Avenue, which is the prime retail area since they killed downtown Danbury years ago, put the mall out there, it's a little sad when you got Filene's empty, and you got most of Wing's property, UB Danbury, most of that's empty. And it just doesn't look good. I mean, you drive around and you say, what's wrong with Danbury? Their prime retail space is empty. That concerns me generally because I'm involved in the economy of Danbury, practicing law here for a long time. But just in terms of analyzing the numbers, Ben, if it makes any sense, we have 6,000 square feet essentially of space that was occupied by Fortunoffs that's empty. And that we don't have parking for at the moment. We're short 14 spaces for Chuck E. Cheese. That's not a lot. We almost make our parking. But if we have to pay $40,000 for 80 spaces to rent 6,000 square feet, which is what we're talking about, then basically it's $7 a square foot just for the parking that's on the rents just don't warrant it. I mean, if you're renting space for $23 or $24 a square foot, you can't have the first $7 go to parking. It's just, this section of Danbury does not warrant that, quite honestly, for a 6,000 square foot outside the mall. The mall is a little different. But, so as it is, at $20,000, we're talking a little bit more than that, you're talking about $350 a square foot for Wing to rent the 6,000 square feet. The economics, have to be considered, and I think that's an issue. We looked at comparables. We looked at the Kaplan lease, which was about, as we said, $215 per car per space per year. And the most amazing thing is, of course, we looked at the Danbury garages downtown, where it's $480 a year per space, but that includes the lighting, That includes the sweeping, that includes the guy who's there maintaining it and punching tickets. I mean, you have none of those expenses here. This parking lot was built by Pat Tisano, not by the city, and it's completely maintained by UB Danbury. So it just seems that the number that we're talking about at $270 base before taxes is really a very fair number. If anything, it's towards the high end of what's going on for other parking around the city. So I'd encourage you to do this because I just think it makes good economic sense all around. And I'd like to see the 6,000 square feet occupied, and I'd like to see the other 14 spaces for Chuck E. Cheese. The other additional parking area here that we're talking about on the grassed area, there I think we can, that will be the subject of a separate proposal. And tonight I'm hoping at a minimum we firm up the lease on the parking that's not open space, already macadam, that has been parking for so long. The other thoughts that everybody's expressed on the grassy area near the horseshoe pits, we'll take that into consideration in trying to make a proposal to the city. But I'd encourage you to adopt the proposal that the chair outlined earlier, because I'd like to see these spaces occupied. It's just, I think it's good business. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else?
The other thing I ask is that we have some FAA regulations that have to be included in the lease to protect the city's interests and the airport's interests in the property itself. They're basically in there now, they're in the current lease. I just want to make sure that everybody understands they have to be rolled over, and if there's any new regulation that I have to put in there, I gotta put them in there.
Unless you'll have this lease available to us by
the meeting.
the meeting and
Mr. Chairman, yes, we have, I think Wayne brought redrafted, updated leases tonight. I didn't have a chance to look at them as they came in today or now, but
Okay.
they'll be available by that time. Before
And
that time.
we're in a position tonight to move forward with the recommendation of both the lease, the property that we've been assigned to do, as well as the other property?
Right.
So we can do both of those.
Well,
this evening.
right. This here.
The grassy knoll.
Waiting, doing that.
Well, if you wait a minute, I'll tell you.
Well, that's why I'm asking. I'm tired of waiting.
You're out of order, Mr. Alfred.
The idea would be, Mr. Chairman, to recommend the approval of the base parcels, the side strip and the back strip, and reserving the possibility of leasing the additional space in the horseshoe area, subject to negotiations. But the only thing we know is the rent would be based on the per space value given to the base parcels. That's the only thing we know. Otherwise, it depends, macadam or not, all that would be worked into the negotiation, and we would amend the lease accordingly at that time. But you would give approval to that option, if you would, to negotiate into that parcel.
If I could, as a matter of procedure, that would then alleviate this additional lease, if there are additional properties, from having to go to another lease, which would force another AdHoc.
Yes, that's right. And that's, the zoning and all those issues are separate, they have to go.
Right, they still have to go through
procedures.
zoning and all that.
So don't say anything about the county
We're gonna get to that.
or any other design features.
Is that Irishman, Mr. McCann?
Stay out of zoning. All you're doing is taking a position
We'd be willing to lease that property, yeah.
period.
Right.
And then that's just, Mr. Chairman, then that's because Mr. Biddle, and this addresses Ben's question in part, Mr. Biddle has a time sequence is very tight. He needs to be able to have some security in knowing that the option at least exists for him, so he can speak to his proposed tenants.
Yeah, if I can't come back to Buffalo Wild Wings after this meeting and say that I can get them the additional parking, they're gonna go, they have a site in Brookfield.
Finally.
What's that?
That's so bad.
That's so bad.
That's why they wanna be near the airport.
And quiet too, almost couldn't hear them.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
before we continue, through the chair to Corporation Counsel, where are we on the past tax liabilities, if there are any? What is being done about that?
Right.
If I could just, before that goes forward, I appreciate your question. But I thought, and I know early on we agreed that the past tax liabilities is between Mr. Biddle and the tax assessor's office, not really a function of this committee. So
That
let's
happens to be my opinion also, but I'm trying to figure out here, on the present proposal, we're going to be including taxes, but that will in no way affect any potential past tax liabilities. These are going to be maintained as two separate issues. This does not clear the deck on the past obligations. That's what I'm trying to find out.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman, is that those issues are
They're
separate.
going to remain separate.
They were discussed together before, but
I
for
wasn't
purposes-
sure if they're going forward, we were going to erase the ones from the past or not. It's still a subject to negotiation. Thank you. That's it.
I have a motion at this point in time.
I'll give it a shot. I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the City Council of the whole the lease of Assessor's Lot F 17011-1 and F 17011-2 to Erstad Biddle Properties Inc. for parking purposes for a period of 15 years, together with 3 option terms of 5 years each, for an initial total and combined net base term rent of $21,600 per annum, said rent being increased by 10% each 5-year period through the entire lease, plus the payment of assessed taxes as billed to the tenant through the office of the assessors and the collector, together with the potential for an additional parking parcel for overflow parking of approximately 45 to 50 spaces immediately adjacent to parcel F-17011-2 if the parties agree, at a rental amount to be based on rent calculated and derived from the base rent described for the base parcels. Further, this proposal assumes that all valid zoning and related approvals have been obtained by the proposed tenant and conditional on a planning commission final approval and a public hearing and posting having occurred prior to the effective date of the lease as required by state law. And that's my motion.
And the city's
And the city zoning regulations.
There's a motion.
Second.
Motion made and
Very
seconded.
fine, yeah.
Just, there's one error in that you have it, the lease running to Erstad Biddle Properties Inc. The tenant is actually the owner of the UB Danbury
Oh,
Inc.
okay.
Okay.
I'll modify my second.
And
Short for Erstad Biddle.
yeah.
Part of Erstad Biddle was
I have it.
Seminole, so.
Right now.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Discussion?
Any discussion?
Yes,
That's
okay,
okay.
through the chair to Corporation Counsel, Les. Mary, could you read the time part again, 15 years plus, was that 15 years plus 3 5-year options?
Together with the 3
So we're looking at 30 years
option
altogether?
terms of 5 years.
Is that correct? We're all on board with that, 30 years potentially? With a 10% increase every 5?
Yes,
Why didn't we do a call on this one?
that was not, that was part of the negotiations. That was a preference of the,
You guys are going $2,000 every 5 years.
Well, I can show you all our leases, they're all
Okay.
national tenants, that's what they're going up. We need that term because that's the term of the Chuck E. Cheese lease, that mirrors the Chuck E. Cheese.
I was thinking you probably could have done better with calls, so we may not have that kind of inflation.
That's gonna go up a lot.
You think?
I don't know,
You're hoping, right?
I don't know.
And then if I could, Les, to you, the number 21.6 represented basically 80 spaces at $270. Is it gonna read that way in the formal lease, or do we need that in the motion?
you could put that in the motion
I mean,
if you
I'm
wanted to
comfortable
be
with 10%.
more specific about it.
Because my concern is 15 years from now, when, other than Ben, none of us are gonna be serving anymore, you know, that,
Ben's gonna be here all by himself.
we don't remember where we came up with the 21.6.
What you might, the one issue of having it 21.6 is that that's for both parcels, gonna be 2 leases.
Correct.
We need a way to split it.
That's why I wanted to
Base
go
it
on
on-
per space.
Based it on
I had
270.
Based on
done
the
that- I had done
spaces.
that math here, I think that That's correct. I haven't done those two years.
We can.
But we can do that in the lease itself, we don't necessarily need that in the motion.
But I'll add that to my motion, the 80 spaces at $270 each, so
So that's
it'll
what we
be,
can understand where
trans-
21.6 came from.
right?
That makes sense.
Are you saying?
You got it, Paul? Okay.
It's just explaining the $21,600 that it came about because it was 80 spaces at $270 each. So when there are two leases, so when they split the lease, that's, they know how they came to the number.
Are they approximately 40 and 40, or what? Oh, they're 42 and 30?
It was 30, 42, and
44,
36.
36. This is what.
Oh, okay.
That's what we did.
Are we gonna be billing separately per parcel? Is that how it
Yes.
would work? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Any further
I don't know,
discussion?
maybe you wanna write that in, do you wanna do that later on, before it comes to the council?
The,
Well, she's gonna put that in parentheses here, as far as the
Yeah.
80.
All right,
yeah.
I'm good.
You're good?
You seconded that one? Is it-
Yes, he's,
I'll second it now.
okay.
I think I already did, but yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.